Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of SKYCAST, the podcast done here in Skydive in Puria Brava. Today our guest is the one and only Pete Allum, who is a FS competitor, coach, amazing canopy pilot, Flight 1 instructor, wingsuiter, Skydive Hall of Fame. We could go on the whole podcast saying what Pete does in the sport and for the sport. Among these things, he's also somebody that has always been really involved in making the sport safer and safer. And so today with him, we'll be talking about canopies and about safe downsizing. Pete, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. And thank you for all you do to make this sport what it is.
It's a pleasure to be part of this. I'm really impressed by this thing that you're doing, just to spread the information a bit further.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I'm going to jump right into the topic. And I think as a first thing, maybe go into a little bit the characteristics, the flight characteristics of the various categories. You know, we can't go into every single canopy, but categories of canopies, starting from the first canopy that all of us have had, which are the student, the very forgiving of mistakes student canopy. So could you explain to us a little bit what they do, how they are?
For sure. I mean, without going into too much detail about the history of how they got to this stage, we'll just talk about the categories. So first thing up would be a navigator or the gyro version, whatever. And we're talking about a 9-cell that's normally between 240 and 280 square feet. They're designed for smooth openings, easy to steer, easy to turn, easy to flare as well, and they're normally detuned a little bit as well. They're very hard to stall. Okay. So you probably remember from back in the day, you know, you can put your hands all the way down and they don't stall. And that's for two reasons. The canopies are just really well designed. They keep a lot of surface tension on the top of the wing. They keep flying for a long time in deeper breaks, but the brake lines are set at a certain length as well. So they're easy to open, easy to fly, easy to land. You can make mistakes on them and still get away with it. And those, it's important to know that the wing loading of the canopy makes a huge difference. Okay. Like if you put two people on one of those canopies, it's going to perform pretty aggressively. But if you keep it below 0.8, around 0.7, wing loading, then it's going to be a nice, easy canopy for a first-time student.
But am I mistaken? The shape is also a bit different for the more advanced canopies, or?
Absolutely. So if we talk about the student canopy first, there's always a little bit of an elliptical element to a canopy design, unless it's a reserve, or most 9-cell canopies have a little bit of an ellipse, and that makes it a little bit easier to be higher performance on the flare and the turns. Okay. But normally 9 cells. And then, so from the student canopy, like what will be the first canopy someone then starts jumping after they finish their AFF, and they're working through their what are they called, the jumps that they do after AFF?
Consolidation.
Thank you very much. Sometimes the English doesn't come out. So during the consolidation jumps, then they might start to downsize a little, getting down the same platform of canopy, but just wing loading a little bit heavier. Okay. So now the canopy is going to descend a bit faster with a heavier wing loading. It's going to have a little bit more forward speed. It'll be a bit more agile in the harness as well, but a very similar platform, like the Navigator or the Sapphire, something like that.
But still stay even wing loaded a bit more. It still stays a very forgiving,
very much so.
Canopy.
Yeah, but once so that's up until like a 0.8, 0.9 wing loading. As we get closer to 1, that's when things really start to move. That's when the descent rate's going to be higher, the turns are going to be quicker. When we do start to roll the canopy for a turn, you know, she's going to start descending and yawing a little bit more as well. Okay. But all those canopies are a very similar platform.
Okay, and they're thought exactly for that. I mean, I think nobody that started this sport didn't make mistakes. That's how you learn. So it's made to not have big consequences from mistakes.
Absolutely.
And then the next category, I guess, again, this is a generalization because we could stay hours talking about every single canopy, but for lack of time and to generalize, I guess go on to the 9-cell canopies, which would be the Sabres, the Sapphires, which I also think are the canopies that are maybe most used
Yeah, so now let's say they've finished their consolidation jumps, they've decided this is a sport for them, and now if they can afford to, they're going to start looking for gear. And so what we recommend is something around 1.1 wing loading, something like a Sabre 3, a Sapphire. There's a number of other different manufacturers, but we'll kind of stick with the big two right now. And again, performance openings are good. As you start to load it a little bit more, the canopy is going to start obviously descending a little bit more. And there are some kind of big differences between, for example, a Sabre and a Sapphire. So if I just dive into that a little bit, like the Sapphire, wonderful canopy, opens good, it's very agile on the turn, you know, and it's very easy to use the harness to it, so you can really start to wake it up. A very easy flare. The Sabre, it has a little more pitch to it, a little more pitch range. So it's maybe not quite as agile on the roll axis as in the turns, but it has a more powerful flare, and that's something that people need to get used to.
Okay.
And if they stay at around a 1.1, 1.2, they can get used to those characteristics before trying to maybe change to a different shape wing.
Does that give it more range? Is that correct, or?
Well, range in which axis? Because let's say a Sabre has more range in the pitch axis,
Okay.
but a Sapphire has kind of more range on the roll axis.
Okay.
So they're different style wings. And depending on what you're used to or what you get given, you're going to find one easier to deal with than the other. Neither one is right. They're just slightly different from each other.
Which kind of makes sense. I mean, there are a lot of different skydivers. Everybody is kind of like, I guess, with a car. You know,
I was just going to say that. Yeah, like some people love Beamers, some people Mercedes, some whatever, and you get kind of bought into a brand as well.
Okay. And these canopies, of course, you can wing load a lot and they become very performing, because I've seen some people jump some very small Sabres, for example, and I mean they're isn't that kind of like one of the good characteristics of these canopies, is they can adapt to anybody who is starting with a 190, 170 with low wing loading, and then evolve on to stay with the person until they start looking for more.
Yeah, the nice thing about that is there's so much you can do with any canopy. Like I love flying canopies from 0.6 wing loading all the way up to 3.6. And if you stay with a brand, for example, let's say you've got a Sabre 3 and you jump in a 190, you love it, you like the way it performs, the way it lands, everything. You next size down, if you choose to downsize, could be a 170. And then you can keep following it down all the way to an 89 if that's what you're looking for in a canopy. And the same thing with the gyro range. You know, if you started on a Sapphire, you might love the way that thing flies and opens and lands, and you can steadily downsize. Now, I just want to address a little thing here. If you're going to change a platform of wing, so let's say you're jumping a Sapphire and you want to jump a Sabre, but you'd like to maybe downsize, please change the platform of the wing, jump it at the same size, and then you can maybe downsize to the next size down from there. You wouldn't jump from one platform to another and downsize at the same time, because the characteristics are going to be different. You really should get used to the way that canopy flies first.
Okay, without changing too many elements at once, because you risk getting yourself in trouble. And then the next kind of, I guess, category is one step further in the experience, theoretically. And we're talking about the 7-cell cross-braced. And the first thing, could you explain a little bit what this cross-brace that everybody hears about means?
Yeah, you know, I'd like to, and remind me if I forget it, bring me back to this, but I just want to ask, like, I don't think everyone is going to end up on a 7-cell cross-brace. For me, finding the right canopy for the right individual and for what they want to do is far more important than trying to progress people onto a more efficient, more rigid, smaller wing. So let's say you get into wingsuiting. You're not going to be on a 7-cell cross brace, you know, you're going to find a 7-cell. Yes, it's going to be a 7-cell, but it's going to be a relatively big 7-cell that can handle the extra turbulence from a bigger wingsuit, that's going to open nicely, easy to deal with twists, and still give you good landings and pack small. Now that's a very specific wing. Let's say you want to get into canopy formation. That's another type of wing. It's a 7-cell, it's rigid, etc. Let's say you're just going to have fun jumps and you want a canopy that packs small, but you don't really want to go crazy and swoop it. you've got a pulse, you've got other canopies that you can get into. So I really think rather than just seeing it as this narrowing, forever narrowing route where we want to get smaller, higher performance, more rigid wings, let's find the right canopy for Allegra, for Pete, for whatever we're going to do. And being as someone who really enjoys different disciplines, I got a real problem. I've got 6 canopies, you know, and each one does something different but suits me for what I'm doing at that particular time.
I'm just going to jump a bit back. You said that both for wingsuit and for, I believe it was canopy formation, you were talking about more rigid 7-cell canopy. Why 7-cell?
Well, on the canopy for the wingsuit, it's for the deployment.
Okay.
Yep. For the canopy formation, it's for a fast, efficient on-heading deployment, and also it's to keep the wing easy to deal with collapses, because when you're doing canopy formation, you're hitting other canopies a lot.
Okay.
And they've actually worked with cross-braced canopies as well for the higher performance canopy
because
formation.
It gives even more rigidity.
More rigidity, yeah.
Okay.
But let's maybe talk now about canopy design.
Yes.
And why did we bring in cross-bracing? It came from the paragliding world, and it's a way to make the wing more rigid.
Okay.
Because with a regular construction that we see on our reserves or on our student canopies, the wing is kind of soft. You know, it still maintains some good pressure, and if you load it, it's still pretty good. But we want a way to keep the wing rigid so that the airflow separation doesn't occur, the wing maintains its shape better. And one way to do that is, instead of just having the cells that you see on a regular canopy, you have cross-brace supports that give more, like in an architectural, like on a building, to keep more rigidity. And the process to do that was started way back in kind of the late 80s, but fabrics weren't ready for it. But in the late 90s, early 2000s, the fabric was ready, the manufacturers were ready, and cross-bracing started to come in.
Okay, and that the fact of the rigidity is the reason why all these very high performance smaller canopies are cross braced, so that they're more rigid and perform better. Is that correct? They're more
effective. They're more. They maintain their shape better. They can land. They have more power, more efficiency. But of course, with all of that, openings. It's something that people don't always expect. Is if you're going to downsize or change to a different plan of wing, you should expect the openings to differ as well.
Meaning that they're a little bit more, I'm a serious canopy and I'm going to make sure you know I opened.
Exactly, and I need to be absolutely symmetrical through it. I need to keep my hands away from the risers, things like that.
And also, from what I see, I mean, also the way to land those canopies is, I believe somebody was telling me that, I'm not sure it's correct, but that if you do like the basic student pattern, the canopies aren't pressurized enough.
I would like to disabuse you of that thought.
Okay, thank you.
I take all of my canopies, even the smallest ones, so I have a Peregrine 61, and I'll even load it up with 20 kilos of weight and do a normal student pattern on it. And it lands beautifully. If someone tells you they can't land their canopy without adding power, they've either got a really bad canopy or they don't know what they're talking about. But these canopies perform really well with natural speed. You see, when a canopy is designed, it's designed with a certain angle of attack. And that angle of attack and the shape, the line, everything about it gives it sufficient speed, because lift is proportional to speed, to create lift. Okay. So, yeah.
But so why most people that I've seen, except in some places where it's not allowed actually, but why the big turns?
Because it's fun.
Okay.
That's it. I mean, you could drive, I don't like jet skis so much, but you could drive a jet ski in a straight line at 5 knots over the water. You could do that, but do people do that with jet skis?
No.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and that before you mentioned the Peregrine, so I'm going to jump into this next category of canopies, which is, I guess, the no free fall, because the Peregrines, the Petra, I believe, is the gyro equivalent. They're canopies that are mostly used to swoop and not to free fly and free fall.
That's a real quick jump to the Formula One of what we do, and let's go there. We'll go straight to there and maybe come just a little backtrack on it. But if you're looking at competition canopies, the Petra and the Peregrine, and there's the fluid wings canopies as well, they're all designed to be weapons, to be rigid wings that just come out of the sky at high speed, and with very little manipulation you can develop incredible vertical speeds which then in turn come to horizontal speeds. Very sensitive as well. So you're looking at Formula One cars for canopy pilots.
Okay.
The Peregrine cannot be jumped at free fall speeds, but the Petra and some of the fluid wings canopies can. So it really depends on the specifics of each canopy.
Okay.
But how many people drive Formula One cars?
Okay, the perfect example.
The problem is that a lot of people have access to these canopies that shouldn't be jumping them, and so there are gatekeepers normally in place at each manufacturer. Like if someone wants to buy one of those wings, they need to get a reference from someone before they do that.
Because they're weapons.
They're weapons, yeah. You put someone who doesn't know what they're doing on that canopy, and like a Formula One car, they're not even going to be driving it out of the pits. They're going to stall it, straight away.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and those are canopies that you see much less, except among the supers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's the in-between category. There's the layers, the Valkyries, the fluid wings, etc. The Schumann platform wings. So we went from the Navigators, the Sapphires, the Sabre 3s. We didn't quite talk about reserves. I think we'll get there at the end, that are more square. And then you have the Schumann platform wings that have a higher aspect ratio.
Okay.
That's just one element of their design. It doesn't make for all the reasons why they perform well, but it's one element. And those are the canopies that more people can get their hands on. Probably they shouldn't, but more people can. They're still incredibly high performing wings, very efficient. You can do crazy things with them, or you can fly them in a straight line and land them pretty smoothly. But they're very sensitive.
And more unforgiving.
Incredibly
okay.
So. Yeah, like if you put someone in my mutant harness, if you like, and put them on a Valkyrie, and if I sneeze, I've done a barrel roll.
Okay.
Okay. So you've got to be ready to the way it's going to respond. You have to be on the ball when you're flying a canopy like that. And people have to be current. If they're not making hundreds of jumps a year, they should not be on those canopies.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And that, before we go briefly into the reserves, that kind of brings that the downsizing needs to be always very well. I mean, with experience, you can become a good pilot also of the high performance canopies, but with experience, you can't.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'll ask you again, how many are Formula One drivers? So a lot of people think they get in the sport and they see, oh, that's where I'm going. And it's like, well, you start driving, are you going to end up going around Silverstone in a Formula One car? Possibly not. No. There's a very small percentage of people that are going to be trained, current, and good enough to be flying those canopies. Because people can get hold of them, we get a lot of people on these canopies that really shouldn't be on these canopies.
Okay, and that's actually, I would like to touch briefly on the reserves and then kind of go into the human factor, because that's exactly a lot of people that are flying these canopies that shouldn't be on these canopies. So just very briefly, the reserves, which are very kind of like the shy kids in class that nobody talks about, but they're the ones that save your butt when things go bad. So just what characteristics do they have?
Well, they're normally bright colors, so that when one opens you see exactly what it is. They're normally single color canopies. They are being made more and more recently out of lighter packing fabrics, so you can get the biggest reserve possible in the size container. They're 7 cells. They're packed inside a free bag, so the deployment is very efficient, very quick. The latest reserves that are coming out are actually really nice to fly as well. And if you haven't, you really should test jump a reserve. Have you test jumped a reserve?
I have.
Perfect.
And
is
I
it
was
the same
surprised
reserve that you have in your canopy?
I tested, yes.
Nice.
And I was surprised, honestly, because it has nothing to, like, it's a totally different canopy. You come in much more vertically. Luckily, a Flight 1 instructor told me, watch out, you're going to come in and flare hard. It's not your canopy, because if not, I would have butt landed it. So just and I believe that's the thing that saves your butt. So to have it in there and not have any idea what it is.
Kind of crazy.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think everyone has the opportunity. I know PD, they have demo reserves. You can jump either a larger size first and then eventually the size that you want to jump, but you can get a real good feeling for the canopy. Now, I love my reserve. When I jump it, obviously you're just like, hallelujah, it's just saved my life. But then they're fun to fly. You know, they're different wings. Like any wing is fun to fly. You can do different stuff with different types of canopy. And if you nail the flare technique on a reserve, it's pretty fun. I mean, it's harder to do, it's a smaller window, but you can still get it right.
Yeah, and I think that that's what makes a good canopy pilot, is somebody that knows how to pilot any canopy.
Well, I have a Sabre 3. I love flying my Sabre 3. I've got my Valkyrie, I've got my Peregrine, whatever, but I love to put my Sabre 3 in, my 97, and take it and fly with other people and swoop it and do all sorts of things with it.
Yeah, and I think that that's one thing that I see a lot in the sport, which is kind of going into the human factor, because we're kind of going towards the end of the time that we have.
Yep.
But whereas, like you say, you know, I have a Sabre, it's a 97, I fly that, I fly smaller canopies. One thing that seems to be fairly present currently in the sport is this desire to go smaller canopy, faster canopy. Granted, I'm a very conservative skydiver, but in what to me seems a very, very quick progression, which is kind of something you said before too. Some people are on Valkyries that should not be on Valkyries. So what is the drive that makes people want to keep going on smaller canopies?
Oh, I think most of the time it's our ego that gets in the way. It stops us from learning, it puts us in very dangerous positions. Me too, I've made those mistakes. I think people see on Instagram, they see their coaches, they see very experienced people flying, and they've got access to all this. In our sport, we're not distanced from the people at the top. We're on a total level. Like, you can walk in here, we've got the packers, we've got the video editors, we've got everyone. We're all on exactly the same level. So why can't I jump the canopy that you're jumping? You know, it's right there. I can go and buy it. And man, it looks really cool what you're doing with that canopy as well. Surely I can do that. And it's cognitive bias as well. You have people that they think, and you know the dangerous between 200 to 500 jumps. People like, they know everything. And you can't disabuse them of that. They do know everything. And the fact that they think that lets you know that they don't. They're not aware of how difficult it is to fly that canopy. If you land out, if you land it downwind, if you have a problem on opening, you know, they just see the nice swoop at the end and they're like, I can do that, I can land my canopy.
Yeah, and if everything goes right, maybe you can.
But
then if one thing goes wrong, then you can't anymore.
And I think with good training, keeping in the sport long enough where you can become aware of your biases, where you become aware of what you don't know. Like, here I am, 37,000, nearly 1,000 jumps, and I'm realizing that I know less and less as I get through the sport, and that pyramid is not like this, it's this way around, and the more you know, the more you start to be aware of the things that can go wrong. So stick around in the sport long enough, on canopies that you're suited to, and then when you feel like you're ready, then you can start maybe moving to something else. Maybe
when you start realizing that you know nothing is the moment to start considering.
Yeah. And getting some help with it as well. Ask your mentor, ask your canopy coach, ask your instructors. You know?
Yeah, ask the people who know.
Don't just have those chats in the bar. They're all fun in the bar, but go to the source.
I think with this advice of, just ask the people and go slowly from Pete, who is somebody that needs to be listened to. We have run out of time, and also it's getting dark. So Pete, thank you very, very much for sharing all this information. Thank you to all of you for following us, and stay tuned for the next episode soon.